and all. They are love and understanding, and they're better than they all. They are languages and letters, they are poetry and all. They are love and understanding, and they're better than they all. There are canyons, they are yawning in the night. They are rank and bitter anger, they are all devoid of light. They are fear and blind suspicion, they are apathy and pride. They are dark and soul foreboding, and they're oh so very wide. They are fear and blind suspicion, they are apathy and pride. They are dark and soul foreboding, and they're oh so very wide. Let us build a bridge of music, let us cross the river song. Let us span another canyon, let us run another road. Oh, and if someone should ask us where we're off and bound today, we will tell them building bridges and be off and on our way. Oh, and if someone should ask us where we're off and bound today, we will tell them building bridges and be off and on our way. We will tell them building bridges and be off and on our way.
We will tell on building bridges and be off and on our way. Welcome to Bridges Programming. This is World Call In. It happens to be a Thursday morning, so it's live. If you want to call in, you can figure out how to do that online. I can't tell you how because I'm not that apt to it. We have with us Susan Comont. I'm Jeff Beller. And
hello.
And there's Dennis Carriers. Hello, Dennis. How are you?
Good morning, Dennis.
Hello, Jeff. Hi, Susan.
And let me see if I can get you to look at our faces while we're talking. Dennis, of course, is not on the video portion, but he is talking to us from 1,800 miles away.
So you can imagine how he looks.
And this is brought to you by the Human Renewable Energy Measure. Bridges Programming is bridgesprogramming.com. You can join us. If you have anything to say about helping humanity, you're more than welcome to join us. If you have a book you want to promote, that's a humanitarian concept, you can do that on Bridges Programming. We also sponsor Renew the Earth, which is a very good, been around for a long time, a nonprofit that talks about renewable energy and good ideas for all over the world. So it's Renew the Earth, and you can see that on renewtheearth.org. Then we have a new blog there about biomass fuels. That's on the program. That's on Renew the Earth website. We also have we're in the process of building a Renew the Earth boat that will give people an opportunity to go look at birds and see renewable energy and talk about what they want to talk about that help humanity on that boat. And we'll be doing that on YouTube just like we're doing now. And Susan is here and she picked out today's topic, and it's called More with Less. And it's, again, Bucky Fuller. And Bucky Fuller was one of the great thinkers within our lifespan, and he really great stuff. So anyway, that's the end of the housekeeping. Renewtheearth.org, bridgesprogramming.com, and the HREM, Human Renewable Energy Measure.
Yeah, within our generation, you're right, because he died in the early 80s or mid 80s. I wish that I had become aware of his work while he was still lecturing, because it would have been really interesting to go to one of his lectures.
We actually had...
We called them talking aloud, and that's like a stream of consciousness, whatever came to his mind.
There's another fellow who's still alive, and he's very similar to a lot of the concepts of
Thinking
Bucky.
aloud.
Right.
And, sorry.
And that was Jacques Frisco, not Jacques Cousteau, but Jacques Frisco. And he runs a project called the Venus Project, and it's about the resource-based economy. And if you would like to check that out, go online, look at the resource-based economy. They're celebrating his 100th birthday.
Amazing.
In next month sometime.
And he's still talking about his lifetime work of the resource-based economy and various.
People from all over the world go to see Jacques, and he's a very interesting character, Jacques Fresco. He's a worthwhile person to listen to, and we've met Jacques about 3 years ago, and his partner Roxanne Meadows. She's about 70 now, and but there's a huge following for the resource-based economy, and
well, it's been reinterpreted and various offshoots of it, and which is what happens to a good idea, and that's to be hoped for, that people will take it and make it their own.
Adopted by the system that's working now.
And well,
the basic premise of the human renewable energy measure is that all humanity, no matter where you are in the world, would be working, and you have to redefine work, about an hour a day of their life for their basic needs met, their education, food, and shelter. That's your basic needs, not your wants. Your wants are different. That's what makes us human. So that's the point. The impetus behind all of our work is to get this concept out there about the human renewable energy measure. That's why we're here. And what you could do with that, I mean, here's what you do. If you want to see a better quality of life, in my opinion, and I guess we're all entitled to our own stupid opinions, but a friend of mine tells me that all the time, is you can use the internet. And if you go to a church group, do a Herman rather than a sermon. Talk about the human renewable energy measure, that all humanity must have their basic needs met in the economic world for 1 hour of labor, their education, food, and shelter. If you don't go to church, you go to your local gin mill.
You're equating it to life labor, which is a very important thing, right. Not to money.
Right.
So this kind of process,
and that's exactly what Jacques Fresco talks about, and and it's been talked. This concept has been talked about since Plato. However, for the first time in history, we can measure in energy units what the needs are in forms of calories or energy.
So within a reasonable parameter, you can hold the economy to satisfying these
physical things required to stay alive.
If humanity makes a decision to insist upon this.
Now, all humanity, by the way, who's alive today, other than the fact that people are starving, a few that are starving, getting their basic needs met, but they're getting them met for a huge amount of time of their life labor to continue to get their basic needs met. And like people where we are right now who are probably listening to this program, we're sitting pretty much fat, dumb, and happy because we have the time, the ability to spend making things, enjoying life. I mean, most of us, with taking care of our grandkids or going to parties or joining groups, we have pretty much free time. We have our basic needs met, plus. But that's not the case in a good part of the world. And that's why we're having wars. We need to stop killing one another. We need to make sure that we help all of humanity, not just this country, because this country is 200 countries in this planet. And this planet is all connected. And I look at it as a big, huge house with 200 rooms. And we're floating, and Bucky says we're floating in a spaceship. And I'm saying we're floating in this mansion. And if we kill somebody in another room, or we take advantage of them, and we force them out of the room, or we force them to starve, we're hurting ourselves, and we have to stop doing that. We have to make sure that all humanity has their basic needs met. And that's how we judge the economic system. Not in gross domestic product, but gross domestic humanity. It has to be based on humanity, how we all help one another. In other words, if we need food, a part of one of our houses, we ship food, not money. If we need electricity, we ship the electricity, not the money for it, because the money is corrupted. And if you want to vote somebody in office, the economic system controls that vote. We need to stop having that. Dennis talks about a dysfunctional government a lot, or a take the money out of politics like it's happening. But how do you do that unless you have a base line to tell you where you are? And we can do that for the first time in history using the internet to get a measurement in energy units for education, food, and shelter. Basic needs met. And there's measurements for everything except
worldwide.
For
you can't just be. There are countries that are doing a very good job of this right now. But while you were speaking, it occurred to me that, you know, because of the amount of time that people put into of their lives, the time of their lives they're putting into making what they need to live in terms of monies. Very few people, at least in the United States, have very much free time. I mean, we have the least amount of vacation time of any developed country, as far as I understand, on Earth right now. And that's just speaking about the United States. But it turns out that that entity called free time, human free time, is very scarce. It's the most valuable thing. And when you have it, as a few of us do, it actually confers a certain responsibility at this point in history on each person that does have free time to think and to read and to educate themselves. And it's important, I think, that they do something that will help enhance the lives of other people who are working all the time. They're using up their lifetime just to get their basic needs met, and their prime and everything of their lives to do this. And if we want the diversity of our species to continue into the future, and that's what you need for a species to continue, is you need diversity. And any species that is successful for many centuries and millions of years has that capacity to evolve because of the diversity and the you can read about the way that apple trees work. Every seed will produce a different type of tree that's in every apple. So their opportunity, that plant's opportunity to go into the future is very, very good. But the point I'm getting to is that if you do have free time, you have a responsibility, I believe, to help enhance the lives of others so that they will have time to think and create and fulfill their human potential, because it's in that all of our success is and has been for thousands and thousands of years. All of our technical creations actually Buckminster Fuller takes us from 3,000 years ago to the mid 80s, and what he discussed in Critical Path. All those technological accomplishments were built on other people's understandings, from the point of the primitive tools to what we do with our space programs now, if you want to call that the epitome, or our internet. All these things are built on ideas of previous peoples and generations, and actually at this point I feel that our economic system is squeezing this potential out of our populations much more than other points in history when people had a little more wiggle room. It wasn't quite as expensive to live. You could drop out, so to speak, for a while to think. Education.
You can drop out of the economic system.
You could drop out of the economic system for a couple of months or a year, and maybe study something or write something or create a new technical. I mean, it's these little cracks and crevices were bigger than for people to have take refuge for a while and let their minds wander, which is a very important thing when you're not always being told what to think and how to live your life by whatever media is all around us. And we do have intense media now, and it's very hard to get away from it unless you live in a subsistence type of situation, which most of the population of the world does. But right now, the smaller part of which we're, the technologically advanced parts of the world, which we are part of, are dominating the impacts on the atmosphere, climate change. We're dominating the way that people can survive everywhere in the world. We're stripping resources out of areas where subsistence farming has always been the survival method, and making it impossible for people to even live that way, and they have to emigrate and try to survive somewhere else. And then we say, oh, don't come into my country because
they're killed and bombed
right.
from other places.
And also, we know what's going on.
What's going on, yeah. And what people don't realize is that it's not just what you see in the news, it's what you don't see in the news. Like in Africa, there was 6 million people killed or more. I don't remember the numbers, but it was close to 6 million people being killed, a genocide. And that was done because, well, they think they talked about it was a genocide because of religious, but that's what the media called it. But the reality was, when you talk to people who were actually lived through it and were part of the political portion, that the Western cultures came in there and they needed their cobalt and their natural resources, so they go to the go-to guy, and he sets up this horrendous war, and they pay him X amount of dollars in percentage to what they're taking out of that country. And to this day, 20 years later, there are still people living in the jungle without
people who have been born there, children who have been born there and 20 years old now.
With horrendous lifestyle because of our need to grow our economy.
Well, we push aside whole countries in order to get what the capitalist economic system demands. And what I want to get back to what we're going to talk about.
More for less, and that's
doing everything with nothing is another way that Buckminster Fuller expressed this. And I'll just read. I don't know where this was going last night. It really fascinated me when I was reading it, and I don't know how we're going to connect this to the human renewable energy measure, but I think we can. Buckminster Fuller asserted that in the overall inexorable trend toward, quote, doing everything with nothing at all, he felt that this was the trend that our species is on, that we're going to ultimately be doing everything with nothing at all. And what he means by this, he called this progressive ephemeralization. And this trend, he describes it as the omniweighable physical mastered by the omniweightless metaphysics of intellect. In other words, it's that what we understand intellectually and how we are able to promote ideas, and sometimes good ideas and sometimes bad ideas, to each other, that this kind of method that humans use with their language is going to be the most effective, and is, I would say at this point, the most effective way to control populations, and either control them for good outcomes or very, very horrible, tragic outcomes. And one of the tragic outcomes would be the way that warfare has developed into the present state, opposing sides that have convinced each other of mutually assured destruction. And that came out of, that we invented the tragic outcomes. And one of the tragic outcomes would be, okay. We have somebody listening to this in our visitor, and but anyway, let me continue. Opposing sides that have convinced each other of mutually assured destruction have come to the conclusion that an even more effective way to win is killing the enemy's ideology. Now, when we talk about killing the enemy's ideology, often that starts with somehow discrediting their religion, or their type of government is the next most popular thing. Like, you're a communist, you're a socialist, you're somehow not as humane as our democracy, or our republic, or whatever you want to name it. The idea, and this is quoting Buckminster Fuller, is to make a mess of the other's economy and customs, and thus discredit the other's political system in the eyes of the rest of the world, and destroy the enemy people's confidence in their own system. And we see that right now with what's happening, with the way that we are being asked to perceive ISIS and the types of horrendous activities that they're promoting, and we're extending the acts of terrorism that are in themselves groups that have chosen a particular way of expressing their discontent and desire for power, but it's being translated in our news media as somehow an overall criticism of Islam and the Muslim religions, which is a completely ridiculous. We rationalize in our news and our propaganda, and try to demonize religions so that people will lose confidence, a specific religion. Just like Buckminster Fuller was saying, this is the way you kill the other person's, the other country's ideology, and religion is an ideology. You try to kill it, and that's what's happening. These people who are terrorists are not religious representatives. They're terrorists, but by extending their behavior and connecting their behavior to the religion of the country that we want to weaken, or we want to push aside for whatever reasons, and there are always economics behind it. This is one of the first steps in using what Buckminster Fuller would call doing everything with nothing at all. In other words, we're using intellect and propaganda instead of weapons. We're using intellect, propaganda, destroying the economic systems of these countries through withdrawing support. These are extremely effective ways to crush
and it also
country.
keeps your mind. The other thing is, it puts you into a cul-de-sac. So you focus on, how do we get rid of these crazy people who are killing us?
Well, it's a spurious connection, because all religions had at their core, at their beginnings, a desire to amplify the humanity of each individual, to somehow protect
And help
the
them.
humanity
Right.
of each individual. This was the case with Christianity, Buddhism,
Judaism,
Muslim, Judaism,
paganism.
even pagan religions, which had many, many gods. But all these one God religions, they're in agreement on that premise, and it's not hard to find that out. And every one of these religions has, at some point and at many points in history, been co-opted by terrorism and by acts that are horrendous.
But I want to bring out,
But they're not religious acts.
I want to bring out
They're
a point
terrorist acts.
that from the very beginning of the economic system, which is about 5,000 years ago, religion was used to co-opt
But that's not religion. That's
but they're using the name.
a terrorist behavior.
They're using the
It's
name. The wars we had with the different kings. They fought crusades. They were basically about economics. They weren't about religion, even though they were blamed on religion.
Well,
It
they
was
were
about
done in the name of religion.
It was controlled to make sure they got property so they can have slaves to get taxes for the kings. It's the same thing as it is now.
So how do we relate this to what we are
Well,
hoping
the
that
human
people will
renewable
concentrate
energy
on?
measure is in fact a way of saying, guys, do what you got to do. However, we can never
First, you
ever
have to
allow
satisfy the human needs.
when the human being to go without food and shelter and education for a minimal amount of their life work. That's what the HREM does. It's a
Wait, you have to
measurement.
restate that. I think you said it.
In other words, what we need to understand is all humanity has to get their basic needs met.
And that should be the role of all our economics
To make
worldwide.
sure the economy
The
is
first
to
and
be the
and
point of
the premise
the
of it.
point of economy is to be
And you will
the
this,
point of the economy is to be economical, and that's what we're referring to. More with less.
right.
As we grow our mind, as we grow our ability to do things, to be
Mhm.
more efficient, it becomes more economical.
Right, it
with-
can become more
And
economical.
instead of 1 or 2 or 3%
I mean,
of this
We've
population
already,
sucking out all that excess amount of
may I,
yeah, I just want to get that point out.
extra value. from
Extra
everything.
value
Right.
going to just a small percentage of the population. We need to share that, and that doesn't mean money. It means to share the intellectual portion, so humanity has their basic needs met, not their wants.
Yep.
Their wants are different than their needs. We all need the same exact amount for food and shelter, and we all live pretty much the same amount of life. So those
So
are
we're
the
talking
3
about a base survival.
worldwide base
yeah.
survival, worldwide base understanding,
And dignity.
agreement
right.
on economics, right?
And
Now,
we've
I'm
already
sorry to interrupt you.
proven,
I want you to
I
get
just
that
didn't want
point.
to lose this thought because I know it would have passed over somewhere. We've already shown how powerful the human intellect is in getting results that are horrendous. War results, oppression, dislocation of populations. We can do this just with words, because we can, as Buckminster Fuller says in this quote, and I'll say it again, we can with words, quote, discredit the other's political system and make a mess of their economy and customs, and in the eyes of the rest of the world, and destroy the enemy people's confidence in their own system. And this is all done with intellect and with our dissemination of ideas, and persuading people that this is the proper way to think about whatever it is that's on the table to be thought about. With that same intellect, people can think in other ways that are helping humanity and moving us toward the possibility of surviving as a species into the future with dignity for everyone, with food, shelter, and education for everyone. These are not, even if you put them in monetary terms, these things, they are the least expensive things that can be provided to people, and they are the essential things that need to be provided to people. And when we're saying again that they cannot be monetized, they are human rights. They are not to be monetized. Like that we can breathe the air. We can't monetize that. We have to breathe the air. We have to have food. We have to have shelter, and we have to have education. These are human rights. And we are born into an economic system that we can influence with our intellect, and we can make it work.
We're going to take a little break
For
now. We're
life.
about halfway through the program. I want you to listen to these words. This is by Pat Humphreys, and it's called Swimming to the Other Side. The words are great. Please listen to the words and see what you think. This is Pat Humphries, and it's called Swimming to the Side, out of the album Hands.
River, we are washed by the very same rain. We are swimming in the stream together, some in power, some in pain. We can worship this ground we walk on, cherishing the beings that we live beside. Loving spirits will live forever. We're all swimming to the other side. I am alone, I am searching, hungering for answers in my time. I am balanced at the brink of wisdom, I'm impatient to receive a sign. I move forward with my senses open, imperfection in me my crime. In humility I will listen, we're all swimming to the other side. We are living in the great big dipper. We are washed by the very same rain. We are swimming in the stream together, some in power, some in pain. We can worship this ground we walk on, cherishing the beings that we live beside. Loving spirits will live forever. We're all swimming to the other side. On this journey through thoughts and feelings, finding intuition, my head, my heart, I am gathering the tools together. I'm preparing to do my part. All of those who have come before me band together and be my guide. Loving lessons that I will follow. We're all swimming to the other side. We are living beneath the great big dipper. We are washed by the very same rain. We are swimming in the stream together, some in power and some in pain. We can worship this ground we walk on, cherishing the beings that we live beside. Loving spirits will live forever. We're all swimming to the other side. When we get there, we'll discover all of the gifts we've been given to share have been with us since life's beginning, and we never noticed they were there. We can balance at the brink of wisdom, never recognizing that we've arrived. Loving spirits will live together. We're all swimming to the other side. We are living beneath the great big dipper. We are washed by the very same rain. We are swimming in the stream together, some in power, some in pain. We can worship this ground we walk on, cherishing the beings that we live beside. Loving spirits will live forever. We're all swimming to the other side. Loving spirits will live forever. We're all swimming to the other side.
Thank you, Pat Humphries. That was Pat Humphries from her album Hands, called Swimming to the Other Side. And Dennis, did you hear the words to that?
Well, almost many of the words I've heard. Some of them were a little hard to hear, but it was very interesting because it's not just our bodies. So, like, we have bodies, just like so many animals on this planet. We're very similar. That we all have this, 2 eyes, 2 ears, a nose, a mouth, but the spirit is very interesting because the way we communicate, what other animals on this planet can sit across the table from each other for an hour and communicate? We have more than just our body. I think we have our spirit too.
Well, that could be, that could be, but I try to look at the scientific aspect of this and not get into the super. And that's one of the problems we run into is we let our mind go to supernatural, and that's where we run into some problems as well.
That's why religion is so very popular for so many thousands of years too, because there are so many things that we cannot express by sitting across the table from each other, as you say, and our language is inadequate to express or even solve a lot of the or what we would think would be a solution to some of the horrendous things that we know are happening and would like to do better. And actually, you know, also we would hope to accomplish our visions. We would hope to accomplish our inexpressible also in our language. But some would say that the dolphins communicate pretty well, the mammals in the ocean, but and maybe just as well or better than we do. They are very highly evolved. But that's just an aside to kind of reset what we were talking about before the musical interlude.
Great.
I'm going to go back to Buckminster Fuller's words, and he says, in carrying out this new and unfamiliar world warring, we do not have to send ideological proselytizers to persuade the people of the other side to abandon their home country's political system and adopt that of their enemies. Instead, we can readily involve, induce, and persuade individuals of the other side to look for discontent wherever it manifests itself, and thereafter to amplify that condition by whatever psychological means until the situation erupts into public confusion, demonstrations, terrorism, etc. So we understand this dynamic. And he goes on to say, quote, this invisible world around warring to destroy the enemy's economy wherever it is operative, above all by demonstrating its homeland weaknesses and vulnerabilities to the rest of the world, and thus hoping to destroy the confidence of the enemy people in themselves, is far more devastating than could be a physical death ray, for it does everything with nothing. It is like food, shelter, and education. It isn't expensive. So why don't we make that our goal instead of destroying people's confidence in their lives and in their lifestyles and in their homeland, instead of using this very powerful method that we all know and are affected by, for doing everything with our intellect? And why don't we promote what will enhance humanity
For
worldwide?
instance, we have a friend of ours, and that person says, why don't we extenuate the positive things in life rather than the negative things? And that's what Renew the Earth used to do. It used to be to always show the positive things that are happening around, the success stories, not the negatives, but the success stories. Let's look at the success stories of, let's say, all the different religions, Judaism, Christianity. Don't look at the wars or the Muslims' religions. Let's look at the success stories of them. Let's look at the positive.
And there are still people working very hard. Our friend Tina Hobson and various people that helped where she lives. They're trying to build a green roof on the assisted living building that they all share.
People can do.
And they've made a prototype, a paper explanation.
It's on our site. It's on
renewtheearth.org. Right. You can see if this is something that you are thinking about in your community, in your city, They have laid out the plan for how it can be done, approximately how much it would cost, what it involves. This is the kind of intellectual activity that we can do when we have some free time as humans. Every human has this potential, and by keeping us away from our ability to have free time to think, the whole system that is oppressing and making this happen now is controlling and making it less and less possible for people to contribute, for democracy to emerge at some point ever, where there is one vote, one person, one vote. And when we speak about the human renewable energy measure, we are actually asserting a real democracy, because by having those human rights satisfied from birth to death, you are saying that each individual is important. Their life is important, just like religions have asserted for thousands of years. But this time it's being asserted by our social agreement. It is not a religion that is asserting it. It is a social agreement. And if we make this agreement with each other, this will be the most profound and revolutionizing movement of human intellect, I believe.
Without picking up guns, without killing one another.
For the future.
It's not a war. It's not a competition.
No.
It's a cooperative thinking process. And that's what we
something
need.
that everybody
cooperation
understands
amongst all humanity. Now, there's another, I wanted to bring something out, and I was listening to you and I forgot what I was going to say, so it must have not been that.
Well, I'll go on and maybe they'll come back to you. He goes on, Buckminster Fuller, to then bring this to what he would hope that people would use their free time and intellect to do. He felt that, you know, he lived through the 60s and 70s and the young people clamoring, as he said, for peace. And he felt that, quote, this could only be realized through technological revolution, which will do so much will do so much more with so much less per each function, as ultimately to produce enough to support all humanity. And he had a great deal of confidence in our ability to keep creating time-saving economical technologies that would keep enhancing our opportunities for education, our opportunities for free time to think and create and fulfill our human potentials. And can you imagine? I mean, at this point, 99% of us, Dennis, as you like to say these numbers, but who knows, maybe it's 96, are not contributing in a significant way from our potentials, because we are being distorted into an economic system.
You're being suppressed by the economic system.
A compulsive economic system that asks you to live in a certain way in order just to survive, and demands that you live in a certain way to survive. And it tells you what to study. It tells you what to think about. And this would free 90 or more % of us to be able to contribute our creativity.
In other words, if every
humanity.
Every human being.
I mean, most of it is suppressed right now. We're just getting the input of maybe 5% of our human population to what will be the future.
If everyone would spend
and
time,
it's almost ridiculous.
If everybody would spend
when you
time,
think about it.
If everybody would try to spend some time on how we help each other, and not in competition, but in cooperation. In other words, use other people's ideas and try to bring the other people's ideas out. Come together, not to, because right now it's where is the dough? Where do we get our money from? So you're all in competition. Even the nonprofits are in competition of where they get their money from, so they can continue to function. And that's the way our society works. But if we work in cooperation and not deal with it's so hard to explain because we're so caught up in this economic problem.
Well, sometimes things that are very, very simple and we can intuitively understand are very, very hard to express in language.
Yeah.
And though, as Dennis said, we are pretty good at talking and creating language and writing, but
Not
it's
enough.
not.
There's something
There is a
intuitively
new. There is more that we need to express, and Jeff and I can't express it all by ourselves. It needs to be expressed by
Other
99% of us.
a larger
And,
number of people.
right.
And that's the point of our programming. We need to try to get people to understand it. And then in your own language, your own way, your own abilities, use your mind to try to get the idea out that all humanity has to have their basic needs met for a minimal amount of their life work, so they're not in slavery. And then you can create a world peace, and we have the measurement. And what someone from Africa called up and said to us about a month ago, keep telling people how they could do it. Well, here's how you could do it.
And
You
thinking
use the
is a big
internet.
part of it.
You use the internet, and your own mind on how to get this simple message out. That all you with a magical number, which is not magic, it's measured. That there's a certain amount of energy units for food, a certain amount of energy units for shelter, and a certain amount of lifetime work by 1 hour. There's enough technology out there, and the way you could do something is by using the internet, using whatever means you have, your church groups, to go to a bar, when you talk to in your family get-togethers, talk to your family about a measurement that helps humanity, not goes in competition with one another. Please try to do that. And I'm sorry I interrupted you, but go ahead.
Well, there was one point where I wanted to just clarify something in your definition there. But then I was reading here, I want to just put, so we don't have too much time, more of Buckminster Fuller's thoughts in here. His whole confidence was in what we can create with technology, because he was a science, that was his strength, and he felt that so much more could be accomplished that way, so that humanity would benefit. And he's saying, develop an ever self-regenerating and improving scientific and technological competence. In turn, this means that the individual must plunge earnestly and dedicatedly into initiating self-development using the resources of the educational system. In other words, you have to have time for this.
We read that paragraph again, because
I'll read it from
this
a
is
higher
really,
point.
really important.
Okay, all who are really dedicated, quote, to the earliest possible attainment of economic and physical success for all humanity, and thereby realistically to eliminate war, we will have to shift their efforts from the political arena to participation in the design revolution. The latter course involves the development of ever self-regenerating and improving scientific and technological competence. In turn, this means that the individual must plunge earnestly and dedicatedly into initiating self-development using the resources of the educational system. And these are the resources, that's unquote, that are being withdrawn from most people in the world now. You either have to game the system somehow to get all the scholarships possible, or you just don't go to college, and you don't get the education that's possible within your country, or you have an inheritance that will pay for it. These
Either
are
way.
rarities.
But either way, no matter how you do it.
Most people can't do it, either because they can't figure out all the ramifications of whatever is available to them because of their
So busy working.
right, or they have no time, right. And young people often opt to join the military because there are promises made there, and possibilities look like they are possible there. And that's happened. So you're not getting the possibility of initiating, as Buckminster Fuller is saying here. You know, you're getting guided development, but you're not allowing people to have the freedom to let's say, what would you say?
You don't have,
Just maybe blindly go places for a while and find something interesting.
Dennis would say mainstream media is controlling us, right, Dennis? You would say that if you listen to Fox News or even NPR, we are being directed like a bunch of animals, right? A bunch of like we're being herded to think a certain way. Is that true, Dennis? You call it brainwashing, right?
Exactly. That's why I enjoy doing this show with you and Susan, to get the truth instead of turning.
Well, I don't know that
media.
We're trying to locate a better way of doing something. We don't know where we're right. We're not saying we're right on. We're not the heads on the snake, but everybody knows there's something wrong. And what I like to do with the truth that I look at is that we are killing people every single day of our life, not wanting to, but just because of the economic system. We are killing people all over the world through our oil control and our controls of natural resources. We to keep on making more and more money rather than helping humanity. So the way we have to measure, the way we handle the economic system is through physical things like how do we help all of humanity? How do we stop poisoning our air, poisoning our soil and our water?
The issue of climate change is coming up a great deal now. We hear it, referred to as human influenced and human made, and it's being acknowledged that it's happening. But still, this can't be resolved if we continue to have the profit premise of our economics.
It's got to change.
It has to be a premise of life survival.
And the Pope is saying we got to change the way we're doing business. When the Pope is saying this, that's a big thing. I mean, he's got a pretty big platform. But mainstream media is pushing that big platform out. When you hear someone like in the United States, we have someone like Bernie Sanders, who's talking about changing a social step. He doesn't even have the answer because he doesn't know one is saying where we are now. We need to have the measurement for all humanity's basic needs met in energy units that cannot be manipulated.
And they have to be expressed within our economics as the premise of our economics. This has nothing to do with governments or with subjective desires of individuals. It has to do with just the needs.
Objective measurements.
And it's
objective
a physical
numbers.
There's the possibility now of physical measurements of what our basic needs are.
Before we run out of time,
and they can be met.
I want to thank
Pat
Humphries. I want to thank Pat Humphries for using her programming, her song. In this case, was Swimming. She does a great job. Her album is Hands. Bill Staines for letting us use Bridges' song on our Bridges programming station. All the people who tune in, and I know there's a lot of you out there who
and
tune
people
in.
That are sending us articles that we can discuss on the air. Thank you.
And I'm suggesting that you look at a video called Zeitgeist Moving Forward. Spell it any way you choose. It's on Netflix. It's a 2-hour documentary. It highlights the Venus Project. It's a really good documentary. We try to share with you all the other things out there so you may be able to enlighten yourself in some form. It's really an important thing that we stop using the way the system is being working, and that's what the Pope is saying, and move to a different thinking process that helps humanity and helps our water and air and soil. And we have to think about energy is you and I are in fact renewable energy. We have a lifespan like any tree. We live a certain amount of years. In this case, it's maybe 80, more or less. We need a certain amount of food.
We're looking at the commonality.
Yes.
Our commonality
as
humans.
Every human being
and
is
what is necessary.
Exactly the same, excepting when it comes to our wants. And if you look at a snowflake, just like people, Every snowflake looks exactly the same, but they're a little bit different. And that's the way humanity is. We're a little bit different. Our DNA is a little bit different.
May I read something?
Yeah, go ahead, please
Yeah,
do.
just let Buckminster Fuller have the last word here. And I know reading this the first time, it may be hard to, because his language is difficult, but it's excellent nonetheless. And he was pushing the envelope of what language can say. And congratulations.
He made up his own words,
and
too.
he even made up his own words. But here he's saying, that quote, if I don't do anything, such and such will happen. If I do so and so, such and such will happen. So these are the two things that people can toy with in their minds. Pure science means, quote, setting in order the facts of experience and therefrom deducing generalized principles if and when they are manifest. Applied science means, quote, the development of technological procedures for objective employment of a plurality of the generalized principles. And then art means the skillful realization of humanly satisfying or challenging special case applications of the theoretical schemes of applied science. He's trying to take us through various ways that we organize what we understand about the physical world. And he's saying that first we look and see what we feel are facts in our experience. Then we look at those and we try to make technology from them, because that's what we do as humans. We create objects, which is so unique. It's even, I think, Dennis, more unique than our ability to speak. And then the next thing that we do with what we observe is we make art. And everybody who wants to participate or understand art does that. It's an instinctive and not very definable at this point, but we do understand when we are standing in front of it or experiencing it.
And in the words of the late Howard Zen, if you do nothing, I guarantee you nothing will happen. But if you do something, something just may happen. I want to thank you all for listening.
We can all organize what we understand, and we can all assert to each other what we feel are real things, real facts of experience. I think that's very important.
Thank you all for listening. Thank you, Dennis.
Bye, Dennis. Thank you.
Your neighbor's out of work because they closed the factory. You try to stretch your paycheck, but it's never quite enough for energy. It all comes down to energy. You wonder where the money's gone. Well, here's some fuel for thought. It all comes down to energy. Fossil fuel affects our lives like ripples on a lake. Cars and farms and factories and trucks. Supplies go down and prices soar, our futures are at stake. And when it's gone, it won't come back, and we'll be out of luck. Oh, energy. It all comes down to energy. You wonder where the money's gone. Well, here's some fuel for thought. It all comes down to energy. We can get our energy from corn and grass and trees. Even trash converts to biofuels. Break loose from the stranglehold of oil companies. Renewables can fuel the world. We're here to spread the news of energy. It all comes down to energy. You wonder where the money's gone. Well, here's some fuel for thought. It all comes down to energy.